Because they came home, what the tribe needed from them now was not the strength to survive, but the willingness to become a part of the community.
Who is stronger, the man who has to stay strong all the time, or the man that can become weak?
Here is Jay and Lori Pyatt from the Couple Cure with this week's question.
How do addicts really change?
Because it's the Christmas season, we're going to do something a little different. There's a couple of scriptures I came across regarding this topic, so we're going to split this up into two parts. The first part will be for non-Christians, and the second part will be for Christians, since it is the Christmas season and a lot of our clients are Christians. And we are too, so.
Yeah.
All right. The first part does apply to Christians as well, and that has to do with true pain or loss. I was told during this phase of our healing, since the last D-Day, the big D-Day in 2010, that addicts change when there is pain or loss. When they feel the pain or loss. And what I've seen in my work with addicts is when there's a real threat of that pain or loss, that can change them as well. As far as what else to do, go back and look at a lot of our other videos. What you can look for is the word solution in the chapter, timeline, timestamp list down in the description, and there's other things you can do. But the main piece we wanted to cover is the devotional that had a scriptures attached to it. But what the devotional said was he gave up the power and majestic splendor of heaven and became a helpless baby. So think about that. He had all the power in the universe, all that power in the heavens, and he gave all that up. He gave up the splendors of heaven and became a helpless baby. Now, what does this have to do with addicts? From my perspective, and Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, in the addict realm, it's like the splendor would be maybe the porn or the smiles without having, the smiles that they get without having to do much. And I mean, even in like men's magazines that are not sexually oriented, there's this feeling that, guy, you're fine just the way you are. You might be fumbling the ball left and right, but that's fine. We'll cover you. And that can become a little, I guess, addictive if, the sales of men's magazines over the years has been any indication. But that message definitely comes across in the, the porn videos and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what that can lead to is when he's confronted, when the addict is confronted by the wife, by the church, he can feel so exposed, or it can feel so abnormal. Like, wait a second, I can fumble the ball and still be called a good guy.
Yeah.
And what we typically see is then the guy goes into a power over mode, where he starts trying to dominate other people, whether dominating his wife through getting intimidating and loud, maybe threatening in certain ways, threatening to leave the church, whatever it might be. But there's a power over dynamic. But there are scriptures that kind of go along with what that devotional was saying. One of them is, unless you become like little infants, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. The little infants in that word, or in that scripture, means like totally helpless baby, totally helpless infant, and completely dependent upon God. Well, the power over dynamic isn't that. That would look like something else that Jay will get into in a little bit. But there's another scripture that says, do not keep the little children from coming to me. For addicts, what this can look like is, don't let that hopeless, dependent side of you keep from getting to God. Like, allow it to come out. Allow yourself to go there with God. Don't hinder that part from coming out.
So to me, like when I look at or think about what I've seen in men's conversations and so on, it's all about be the boss, right?
Mm.
Dress like a boss, move like a boss, all those kind of things. Regardless of how you're actually showing up in life, you should be a boss. And when someone else is saying, no, you're hurting me, and I need you to change, and I'm going to ask you to give up all of that and become helpless, that's counter to the boss culture conversation. And so that's step one of recovery, which says we admitted we were powerless over our addiction and that our lives had become unmanageable. And then in step two, we say that we needed a power greater than ourselves to restore us to sanity. And I have a couple of short videos on those that you can check out. But we also did a whole season on the 12 steps, so there's longer videos there too.
Mm-hmm.
But if you won't admit your weakness, if you won't admit that you need help, you can be a boss all day long and things aren't going to get any better. You need to let go of all of the thinking that got you where you are, because it's not helping you move forward. It's only making things worse. And it is counterintuitive, it is countercultural to let all of that go, to stop exploiting your power, to stop exploiting language, to stop exploiting your wife's kindness, and humble yourself the way that Jesus did, giving up everything, all the power that he had, to become weak and helpless.
Mm-hmm. So what does this look like? From where I've seen it in my own life when I came to Christ, from what I've seen with other people that I've known that have gone through that change, or that have gone through like a 12-step type program, what this can look like is I have totally made a mess out of my life, and I'm completely clueless when it comes to like relationships or communication. When it comes to how to do this, I'm an infant. I'm a helpless baby. I'm completely dependent upon other people teaching me.
Yeah.
Now, one side thing that I wanted to say that came to mind whenever Jay was talking, one of the reasons that power over dynamic comes up is because guys don't know what to do. Here she is, she's saying she's hurting, and he's like, well, I don't know what to do. One thing we strive to do with our clients is we focus on the times he has done it well. And when he starts, especially on the 2-on-2 calls, when he starts like ramping up, it's like, dude, you know how to do this. You know how to do this. You did it back during, the time where you guys were replacing the dryer, or whatever. Remember what you did there? You did this and this and this. You know how to do this. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, oh my gosh, I can do this. And then, do that now. And then he does those things and he starts locking away. Wait a second, I can do this. And I don't have to go to anger because there's something that's much more effective. Right. So do check with yourself. Do you start going into that power over mode simply because you don't know how to make it right? If that's the case, hopefully you have somebody in your life that can help you. If not, reach out to Jay or somebody like him, because there are solutions out there.
Right.
The next piece that came across my path about this was Jesus did not stay a baby. He didn't stay an infant. There's a scripture that says God became man and dwelt among us. He grew up. Now, what does this have to do with addiction? Many people, many guys came across porn when they were children. All right. It might be time to outgrow that. There are scriptures that say, when I was a boy, I thought like a boy, or when I was a child, I thought like a child, I acted like a child, and then I put away childish things. That to me is saying, there's a time to outgrow those things. Now, a lot of guys will say, but if I become like a helpless baby and then grow out of these things, the men in my community are going to say, that's wimpy, that's childish. that's not how we do things in this family. You have to be a man, that sort of thing.
Right.
It might be a moment to step away from that and build a community of like-minded men going in the same direction you are, but also be thinking, who is stronger? Especially if there are people calling that weak. Who is stronger, the man who has to stay strong all the time, or the man that can become weak? I wrote something years and years ago about me and a couple of other female friends that I had, and what I wrote about myself was she was strong and she was strong and she was strong, and she wasn't strong enough to become weak. And that, I believe, was one of the stepping stones of me coming to the end of myself, realizing all my strength was literally ruining my life. And that's, eventually where I met God, and things really turned around at that point for me.
Right. Yeah, for those of us that found porn as children, it was a coping mechanism. When we get into addictive behavior, it's a coping mechanism to deal with troubling things that happen in childhood. And there's a movie called The Heart of the Sea, where men are shipwrecked for months, and in that process, they eat the dead. And we look at that situation and we say, that's totally understandable. I get why you would do that. However, when we return to land, when we return to civilization, it's using people for food, and that's no longer acceptable. And so what many men don't recognize is that they're no longer in a survival situation. They're still trying to cope and not actually stepping into a healthy life. They're not getting healing. They're just continuing in this coping mechanism. For the guys, a little bit different story, but at the end of World War II, as men were returning to their islands throughout the Pacific, there were many elders on those islands that would say to the young men returning, basically, we don't care what you had to do to get back to us. We're glad that you came home. And because they came home, what the tribe needed from them now was not the strength to survive, but the willingness to become a part of the community, a willingness to lay down everything they had learned and do something new for the good of the tribe. And so that is what you're being called to. Your war is over. You're no longer in those survival situations, even though I know that the trauma always feels like right now, but there's ways to heal that we might stop coping and start living. We're inviting you to life. Stop living like a cannibal and eating human flesh, but to eat of healthy, wonderful food without guilt, without shame, and become a part of a bigger community.
I don't know. I'm trying to think. It's just seeing Jay's transformation over the years. I mean, from a person who could not sit still, he could not get quiet. He definitely couldn't talk relationally. He would make jokes or and definitely could not take criticism or negative feedback, or could not handle my pain. And to see him come out of it has been miraculous. But also just seeing Jay's heart, now I don't know what you were thinking, but I was thinking he was thinking just how many men come and are able to turn their lives around. And for me, watching the guys relate differently to their families and their wives is like a beautiful, beautiful thing to behold, to see that man come back on land and to hear the wife go, I get it now, and you're making it right. You're making things better. So anyway, that's what we have. Yeah, so we'll see you on the next one, and we hope you have a wonderful holiday season.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.